Okay, so have you heard about this OpenAI O1? Supposedly, and I mean, it's OpenAI, so who knows, but supposedly it's crazy ahead of even, GPT-4.
Really?
Yeah. In terms of like pure reasoning.
Wow.
Like we're talking coding, right?
Right.
Like competition level coding.
Ugh.
Crushing like math Olympiads.
No kidding.
Even like going head to head with PhDs that like
Yeah.
scientific, analysis and stuff.
Yeah. That's definitely making some waves. It's interesting, though, OpenAI is being kind of hush-hush on the specifics of how O1 actually works.
Right.
But, I mean, from what we are seeing, the results seem to show that there's something pretty big happening with, artificial reasoning here.
Yeah, and that's what's so intriguing, right? But it's also,
Yeah.
like with the secrecy, it's hard to tell what's hype and what's real.
Right.
And so that's why I'm really excited to dig into OpenR today.
Yeah.
Because this is, attempting to like crack the code, so to speak, but through an open source framework.
Yeah, exactly. OpenR is, it's a very ambitious project, right? It's more than just like trying to copy what O1 does. It's really trying to understand the core ideas behind this, like advanced reasoning, and then hopefully, make it accessible to everyone.
Now, that's what I call a deep dive.
Right.
So where do we even begin? I'm ready to like, unlock the secrets of this thinking AI.
Okay, well, at its core, OpenR, much like this O1 we've been talking about, is based on this idea called, get this, LLM native chain of thought. Native code for short.
Catchy.
Yeah, I know, right? But honestly, it's a really cool concept.
Right. Lay it on me. I'm all ears.
Okay, so imagine the way, like, we as humans solve really tough problems. We don't always just get that answer immediately, right?
No.
It's usually a process, right? Like you
Yeah.
break down the problem, you analyze the parts, you think about each step logically.
So it's more like you're slowly fitting all the pieces together until it clicks.
Exactly, and that's what OpenR is doing. It's embracing that thinking slow approach. Yeah, it's a big shift, from those really fast, almost like instinctual responses that we often see in AI to this more deliberate step-by-step process.
So it's like it's moving from that gut feeling to a more methodical, analytical approach. Like, are we talking about System 2, thinking like Kahneman talks about?
You got it. That's exactly it. And this shift to System 2 and AI, it could be huge. Because now it lets the AI tackle these problems that need complex reasoning and not just like recognizing patterns.
That makes a lot of sense. But how does that thinking slow translate into like OpenR's architecture? Does it have like a little whiteboard inside where it's like writing things down?
Think of it more like a structured process, kind of like following a recipe or something.
Okay.
OpenR takes each problem and breaks it down into 3 parts. You got your question Q, your reasoning steps R, and your answer A.
QRA. It's like a roadmap.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Each reasoning step, it's like a piece of the puzzle, and OpenR is putting it all together to get to that solution.
Man, this is already fascinating. But how does OpenR learn to reason this way? Like, is it just being spoon-fed all this info by like a ton of programmers?
That's where it gets even more interesting, I think. OpenR uses this really clever technique called data augmentation to learn. So instead of needing humans to label everything, it uses this special set of data called MATH-APS, and it can actually generate its own examples to learn from.
So it's like making its own study guide.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty impressive, right?
Wild.
And get this, it can even analyze its own work, so it can look at its attempts at solving problems and see where it might have gone wrong in the reasoning. It's constantly learning and getting better, almost like it's self-critiquing.
It's like having a built-in tutor that's like, hey, you missed a step there. Let's look at this again.
That's a great way to think about it. And it's a key part of why OpenR is so cool. It means it doesn't need these massive human-labeled data sets, which are super expensive and take forever to make.
So it's learning more on its own. It's more efficient. And it could even like speed up how fast AI is developing overall.
Totally.
This is seriously next level stuff.
Yeah.
But okay, there's got to be some kind of quality control here, right?
Right.
Like who's making sure OpenR is staying on the right track while it's, off doing its own thing?
Good point. That's where these process reward models, or PRMs, come in.
Yep.
They're like the guides, and they evaluate not only the final answers, but also every step of the reasoning along the way.
So it's not enough to just get the right answer. It's about understanding how you got there.
Exactly. These PRMs, they give feedback on how efficient and accurate that reasoning is. So it makes sure that OpenR isn't just stumbling onto the right answer, It's got to be using sound, logical processes to get there.
So it's like having a coach that's like, all right, your technique is a little sloppy. Let's work on that.
Yeah, I like that analogy. But how do these PRMs actually learn to judge OpenR's reasoning in the first place? It's a little complicated, but basically it uses something called reinforcement learning, or RL.
RL. Now, that sounds familiar. Isn't that how they taught AI to play Go and, like, crush chess?
You got it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's the same concept here. It's like OpenR is playing this logic game, right? It tries different approaches, and the PRMs give feedback based on how well it's doing. And then over time, OpenR gets better at making the right decisions and refining its thinking.
So it's like it's constantly playing and experimenting, and with every try, it becomes a better thinker.
You got it. It's constantly learning from its experiences thanks to those PRMs.
Man, this is already blowing my mind. But okay, so if OpenR is working through these problems step by step, how does it figure out which paths to take when there are multiple options? Like, is it flipping a digital coin?
That's where this thing called test time compute comes in, along with some, algorithmic magic.
Okay, now you're going to make me feel like I need to go back to school for computer science. Break that down for me.
Okay, so imagine, right? OpenR has all these different paths it can take to get to the answer, like train tracks or something.
Okay.
Test time compute basically gives OpenR the chance to, explore a bunch of these routes at the same time.
So it's trying out different ways of thinking all at once. Like it can see all the angles before deciding which one's best.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just randomly wandering around, It uses these things called algorithms, like beam search, to guide the exploration.
Beam search?
Yeah, so picture a beam of light shining down these different paths. It focuses on the routes that seem most promising and ignores the ones that are dead ends or, less likely to get to the right answer.
So OpenR is like a master explorer, right? It's like charting the best course through this maze of reasoning possibilities.
It's a great way to put it. And remember those PRMs we were talking about, those guides?
Yeah.
They play a really important role here too.
How so?
Well, each of those potential paths we are talking about, they get scored by the PRMs. So the PRMs, they're checking how accurate and efficient each path is.
So it's like the PRMs are the judges in some kind of mental gymnastics competition, right?
Exactly. And the paths that get the high scores from the PRMs, those are the ones that are the most logical, most efficient. Those are the best solutions.
Interesting.
And the cool part is OpenR doesn't just give you the answer, it actually shows you its work. So you can see every step of that reasoning process.
That's huge, right? Because you can actually see how it's thinking and understand the logic behind it, which seems pretty important, especially if AI is going to be involved in making bigger and bigger decisions.
Totally. Transparency is key. And, even though OpenR is still pretty new, it's already doing some crazy impressive stuff.
Okay, let's hear. What kind of performance are we talking about here?
Well, in tests using that MATH-APS dataset we talked about, OpenR consistently outperforms other AI models, especially when it has more time to think.
So the more time it has to explore those different reasoning paths, the better it does.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Which really just proves how powerful this whole thinking slow, step-by-step approach really is.
Yeah.
And what's even cooler is, those PRMs?
Yeah, the judges.
Right. So they're finding that which PRM you use, it can actually make a big difference in how well OpenR does on certain tasks.
Oh, interesting. So different judges, different scores.
Yeah, basically. It's like anything else. Some coaches are better suited to certain athletes or whatever. So it's all about finding the right PRMs to help OpenR, reach its full potential.
I like it. But be honest, is OpenR a perfect reasoning machine? Does it ever mess up?
Well, of course, it has its, limitations. It's still under development. There are times when it can kind of trip up.
Like what?
Well, for example, sometimes OpenR gets fixated on one specific line of reasoning, even if it's not the best way to go.
So it's it's going down a rabbit hole, but a reasoning rabbit hole. Convinced it's onto something, even if all signs point to no.
Exactly. And the research, they're working on that, right? Figuring out how to refine the process so it doesn't get stuck like that. Maybe adjusting the training data or, tweaking how the PRMs give feedback.
So it's all about constant improvement, finding those weak spots, and making it better.
Exactly. And that's what's so great about OpenR. It's not a finished product, it's constantly evolving. But even now, the potential here is just massive.
Okay, enough teasing. I got to know, what could a future with OpenR actually look like?
Imagine, right? A world where AI can help us make smarter decisions. And not just in those really specialized fields, but in everyday life.
Okay, now you're speaking my language.
Sure.
Give me some examples. What kind of everyday decisions are we talking about?
Well, take personal finance, right?
Okay.
OpenR could, analyze your whole financial situation, your income, your spending, your goals, everything. Even factor in things like, market trends.
So it'd be like having a personal financial advisor, but available 24/7.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Yep.
Especially since I'm more of a buy now, figure it out later kind of person.
And that's just one example. What about education, right? OpenR could be like a personalized tutor for every student. It could figure out how each student learns best and at what pace and, adjust accordingly. It could help them when they get stuck, give them explanations that make sense to them, even suggest resources.
That would be revolutionary. No more one-size-fits-all teaching. Every student gets exactly what they need. That's amazing.
Right. And then there's scientific research. Imagine OpenR analyzing these massive data sets in medicine, climate science, all of it. It could be finding patterns and insights that would take humans forever to uncover.
So OpenR could actually help us make these huge scientific breakthroughs, like potentially finding new cures and solving the world's biggest problems.
Absolutely. And because it's open source, think about it, researchers from all over the world can work on it together, which means faster innovation and, hopefully everyone benefits from it.
That's pretty exciting stuff. But it also feels like, we're stepping into the unknown here.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any challenges, any risks that we need to be thinking about as we go further down this road of advanced AI reasoning?
Oh, absolutely. That's a really important question. I mean, the more sophisticated these systems get, the more careful we have to be, right?
Yeah.
We got to make sure they're being developed responsibly.
Yeah, it's like we're letting AI make more and more decisions, but we got to make sure they're good decisions,
Exactly. And that starts with the data OpenR learns from. Is there any bias in that data? And what about those PRMs, the guides? What values are we building into those?
Right, because we're not just building a system. It's more like we're shaping how this AI thinks.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. We have to be really careful about the kind of thinker we're creating here. We need to make sure that how OpenR reasons lines up with our own ethics and what we want as a society. So we got to ask the tough questions. How do we make sure its decisions are fair? How do we keep it transparent? How do we prevent any risks or unintended consequences? These are big questions, but we can't ignore them.
It's a lot of responsibility, but also a huge opportunity. I mean, we could really shape the future of AI here to benefit everybody.
Right. Absolutely. And that's what's so cool about OpenR. It's transparent. It's open source. Anyone can contribute. So we can all be part of this global conversation about how to develop and use AI responsibly.
I like it. So as we wrap up this deep dive into OpenR, what's the one big takeaway you want listeners to walk away with?
I think it's this. AI reasoning, it's not some far off thing. It's here, it's now, and it's going to change everything. OpenR gives us a glimpse into this future, the good and the challenges. It's up to all of us to get involved, think critically about this tech, and work together to use it for good.
A future where AI helps us be our best selves while, still holding on to what's important. I'm into it. And there you have it, folks. Another deep dive into the wild world of AI. Just remember, the future is unwritten. It's up to all of us to make it happen. Until next time, stay curious and keep those questions coming.